What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pick Six podcast. Happy NFL New Year, CBS Daily NFL podcast. Woo! I'm Katie Moggs here with Will Brinson and Tyler Sullivan. This is day 3 of the 2023 free agency show. Join us all week long as we break down the chaos. And while you're at it, show the show some love. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, comment, and subscribe. For our audio only listeners, make sure that you download, follow, leave a review, and please tell your friends what's up to watch and listen to the pod. Brinson and Sully, nice to see you again for the second time today.
What's up? How we doing? Happy NFL New Year, Katie.
Happy New Year,
Sully. Yeah, I mean, look,
we should have no champagne. We missed the boat here.
Or at least mimosas. Definitely should have had a party hat of some kind. All I have is this giant swirl of a cowlick that's going on in my head right now. I need a haircut.
Looks good today, Brinson.
Thanks. It's swoopy. Yeah, it's inbox is being flooded right now with press releases from NFL teams who aren't officially allowed to announce signings until 4:00. Now they can do that. We can anyone can talk to Lamar Jackson now officially, and tampering is no longer a problem. Anyone who's if you're an NFL player, you've been talking to teams, but now your free agency has begun. Although it is, I mean, that part is kind of. I sort of wish they would just start it at 4:00 on Monday.
This is just it's a weird inception in the NFL where Happy New Year, they can start talking, even though they've really been doing it since Monday.
Here's one that just came down.
Let's do it.
Jacoby Brissett signing with the Washington Commanders.
Nice.
For Diana Ricci, whatever her name is. The Commandos, Jacoby Brissett. That bums me out. Yeah, I was kind of hoping Jacoby Brissett would go to the Panthers. They, of course, landed Andy Dalton. I thought just a nice fit with, Brissett and Frank Reich, who would work together. I would guess that Brissett maybe saw the tea leaves, because Andy Dalton's has been a backup for the last few years. Brissett started when Sean Watson was suspended. Has to think that he could, beat out Sam Howell. Oh, NC State versus Carolina. Ooh, spicy. Brissett versus Sam Howell. Let's go, Jacoby.
I'm glad you got the rooting interest now. But this is what the Commanders were saying they were going to do. They wanted to find a veteran quarterback to complement Sam Howell as they put him in the offseason as their quarterback one. And Jacoby Brissett makes a ton of sense. I mean, he was somebody that, I know that we've talked about in Katie. I think we've talked about it with you too, where he would be good in San Francisco for a few weeks if all of a sudden, Brock Purdy and Trey Lance aren't ready. He has been that perfect kind of stopgap guy. But this could be, you never know. If the floor falls out on Sam Howell, Jacoby Brissett is not a bad guy to lean on if that happens.
I mean,
I would have rather had Jacoby Brissett than Sam Darnold.
Yeah, I would guess that if Sam Darnold, I would just guess that the Commanders, I think they probably wanted to find the guy who gave them the most upside as a starter. You know what I'm saying? And I think Brissett, as you point, I said it and you said it, right, Katie? I'd rather have Brissett with the Panthers. You'd rather have Brissett with the Niners. Brissett would rather be with a team where he thinks he can start. And worth noting, Jacoby Brissett, I'm 99% sure this doesn't have an agent as well. So that may be a case where there's this had been agreed to, but there's no tampering because who's going to leak it out? Jacoby's probably don't even say anything. You know what I'm saying? There's no agent to leak out numbers. He doesn't need to get it out there because agents always want to do that on Monday. So that actually makes a lot of sense that this tampering could have occurred. And, the team didn't really care to leak it out because they're probably not paying him a ton of money. That's kind of interesting.
And one thing to point out too with Brissett, it's the Buccaneers were reportedly interested in him as well, and they obviously have signed or agreed to terms with Baker Mayfield earlier today. So there goes that option. That was probably the clearest avenue for him to start. I know that Kyle Trask is kind of in that same boat as Sam Howell, as they're going to give him the opportunity to start, but you never know what's going to happen. But if you're Brissett, you still fall in a situation where I think that there's a decent avenue where you could potentially find yourself as a starter here. So that's good.
Oh, yeah. I think there's a really good chance that Jacoby Brissett could end up beating out Sam Howell. It's a really good combination outside of the State Carolina thing. And they
whatever.
I don't think they're they might have a bet, when the two teams play, but they didn't cross over. They don't have any beef or anything like that. But it's, you have Jacoby Brissett who could beat out Sam Howell and give you a nice floor. But also you have a guy in Brissett who's not going to rock the boat and be a problem if for some reason Howell wins the job. And I think, in a perfect world, the Commanders would love Sam Howell to beat out Brissett.
he does all the same things that Heineke does outside of the fan favorite, his kind of pushed to be that starter. You still get all that stuff without the pressure of, all right, this guy was kind of sort of our guy for a little bit. And he still maybe wants to be that. Maybe there's some guys in that locker room that believe he could still be that guy,
Yes.
but you still get the nice floor of Jacoby Brissett, the same thing that you have at Heineke.
Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah, I was going to say,
I was gonna say sneakily, he's like sneakily unathletic, but also sneakily athletic. You don't, like he's not nearly as mobile as you think you see him. You're like, oh, like he's not a mobile quarterback. Like he can run, but he's really not a mobile quarterback. It's kind of interesting.
I think he did well. Yeah, I think he did really well last year. And I also think that he's a big locker room guy. I think he's got a lot of respect from the people that he plays with and is a really good leader. So you always want that with your team. But Sully, I got to go from one Jacoby to the next. Jacoby Myers out. JuJu is in. Patriots give a 3-year, $33 million deal, a very big investment. As the resident Pats fan, how you feeling?
You're also going from Jacoby to NC State to NC State there too. So it's really, there's a lot of connections there. Very, very interesting. Obviously, you have Jacoby Myers and JuJu Smith-Schuster basically signing the same deal. I don't know necessarily the guarantees, but 3 years, $33 million guaranteed. Jacoby Myers going to Las Vegas. Patriots coming to terms with JuJu Smith-Schuster. I feel like it's a little bit of a lateral move. Yes, there's probably a higher ceiling with JuJu Smith-Schuster. I have no faith that he's actually going to reach that with New England. I was much more confident in retaining Jacoby Myers, a guy that Mac Jones really liked and had a great rapport with, and then going forward and adding on somebody to complement him. Because really, Jacoby Myers is a number 2 wide receiver. He's that now in Las Vegas with Devontae Adams opposite of him. And that was kind of the hope that he would be this offseason with New England, adding somebody. Now that a guy like JuJu Smith-Schuster comes in, I'm a little nervous that this is it for New England. There was rumors earlier in the day that they were in on Jerry Jeudy and DeAndre Hopkins and Odell Beckham. I kind of wonder if this is it. And if this is it, I don't feel like they've really done anything to vastly improve that offense.
Yeah, like JuJu Smith-Schuster is only 26, by the way, which is just crazy. But you had Jacoby Myers, who's also 26. I mean, they're the same age. It's pretty wild. I'm biased here, so like take it for whatever it's worth. I would prefer Jacoby Myers, especially when you're talking about a team like the Patriots, where JuJu Smith-Schuster got in a bunch of hot water with the Steelers because he was loved to be on social media, loves his TikTok, and he's with the Chiefs, and like he was pretty quiet about it most of the season. But then you have like stuff just around the Super Bowl, the trash talk afterwards. Like you just wonder like how is he like. Like we were talking about before the show. I mean, like that ain't Belichick's style. Like Bill Belichick and JuJu Smith-Schuster seemed like an odd match. I will say that the offense, presumably that they'll run, JuJu does seem like a player who would fit very well in what the Patriots want to do from an offensive standpoint. But again, you had Jacoby Myers there, somebody who you scouted, like you scouted and you picked up as an undrafted free agent, and you knew what he had in the building, and so you replaced him with JuJu Smith-Schuster at basically the same price. Allen Lazard, by the way, got the same contract too. It's like all these wide receivers are getting these $11 million per year deals that are basically 1-year deals disguised as 3-year contracts.
And I don't know if you saw this, Brinson. Jacoby Myers tweeted or responded to the tweet of JuJu Smith-Schuster going to New England saying cold world. So it would lead you to believe that he would have accepted the same deal had it been offered to him. So again, I'm kind of putting words and connecting dots that might not be there, but his kind of negative reaction to JuJu getting a very similar deal tells me that he probably would have returned to New England had he been offered that deal, which again, just kind of, rubs me the wrong way a little bit as to how the Patriots are kind of forming this offense.
It is worth noting that the Patriots have for a very long time been very reticent to give bigger contracts to undrafted or really late round guys, particularly the undrafted guys that they picked up and turned into, high quality products like Malcolm Butler. He succeeded in New England. They let him walk. You have JC Jackson. Exactly. Thank you. And then now you have Jacoby Myers. So, I mean, I don't know if that's like a principle thing where you don't want to, I obviously don't want big exceptions to Tom Brady here, but like, although, I don't know, it's weird. Like Edelman and, they've kept some guys, but it's just that undrafted factor really seems to, they don't want to give a contract.
Yeah, I do wonder if that is a Belichick thing where it's, I brought you in, I've kind of made you who you are, I can find the next guy and do the same thing. I wonder if there's I don't want to call it arrogance, but I do wonder if there's a confidence that he can plug and replace those types of players that he feels like he plucked out of obscurity into a prominent role in New England. So that's kind of where I'm at. Just to go back a little bit more big picture with this, because I do think that you need to look at it from a big picture view. I've said all offseason with New England, they need to take major swings because of what the division is becoming. I mean, we were just on a podcast talking about Aaron Rodgers coming to this division. Buffalo's a Super Bowl contender. Miami is up and coming with Mike McDaniel now going into his second year as the head coach. You just see what New England's doing right now. They're continuing to act like Tom Brady's still the quarterback and he can kind of elevate these guys. And Mac Jones is a former first-round pick. He was promising in his first year, took a step back this year. But I just wonder if they're kind of operating in a way where they feel like they're better than what they are. Like they can elevate anybody that's there, which really was the case because you had Tom Brady. Now you don't have him anymore. You need to surround your young quarterback with top-tier talent. We've seen it over the course of the past few years, whether it's A.J. Brown going to Philadelphia, Stephon Diggs going to Buffalo, even possibly D.J. Moore going to Chicago with Justin Fields. These teams are aligning them with top-tier wide receivers, and it's seen them take a huge boost. I don't know if JuJu Smith-Schuster is that type of a player to give Mac Jones that next-year boost.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't there talk that they were looking at other possible wide receivers too?
And so this is what gets a little bit frustrating. Jeff Howe, the Athletic, he was formerly the Boston Herald. He's very plugged in with New England. He reported earlier in the day that the Patriots have made calls with DeAndre Hopkins and Jerry Jeudy. They also were obviously at Odell Beckham's free agent workout last week. But the thing that was annoying about that report, and Jeff's just reporting it, it's not necessarily anything that he's doing, but the last nugget was, but the price point remains the key component. Yep. That's what's going to frustrate a lot of New England fans. And it's kind of what I was saying earlier, where they're operating that they can still get guys on the cheap and elevate. You could do that when you have the greatest quarterback of all time. You can't necessarily do that right now. So if you could get Jerry Jeudy or DeAndre Hopkins, that's fantastic. That will dramatically help Mac Jones. But if you're not going to extend yourself, and I'm not saying give up the number 14 overall pick, but I think you have 4 or 5 other draft selections within the top 150.
They've got 14, 46, 76 from Carolina, 107 from the Rams, 117, a 135 compensatory pick. So you got a lot of picks.
You have a lot of assets to go do something that could bring in a premier guy. And then if you're telling me it's DeAndre Hopkins and JuJu Smith-Schuster or Jerry Jeudy and JuJu Smith-Schuster, all right, now we're cooking.
Yeah.
I just don't know if that's going to be the road they're going down.
And let's not forget too that, like, I mean, you know, the Chiefs just won the Super Bowl with JuJu Smith-Schuster ostensibly operating as their number 1 wide receiver, whatever you want to call it. But they got Travis freaking Kelce. Like the Patriots don't have Rob Gronkowski. They sure as hell don't have Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady. I mean, no offense to McCorkle Jones. It's just like it is. You sort of wonder, like, did Bell? I mean, and I don't want to question Bill Belichick, you know, but. Like
he's missed the playoffs 2 of the last 3 years post Brady. You can start questioning if you want.
Okay, I think Boston people are Boston, like in Southie, they're getting a little loose on Belichick. But like I think like it's the arrogance you mentioned. It's sort of it's like, well, I mean, you know, we did it. We made the playoffs with, like, you know, Edelman and Welker, and it's like, yeah, but you had Tom Brady.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, if Mac Jones becomes a great and in fairness to Mac Jones and Belichick, the utter idiocy of rolling with Joe Judge and Matt Patricia last year was an obvious setback. But then you point, it's like, well, who did it? You know, like who's the guy who said this is going to work? Belichick. Like that's right. The crazy part. You're like, oh, you think like what? And so it is fair. Victor Garcia says, no way the Pats are done. I would agree. I think they have to add more pass catchers, but it's just like we can now, I think, at this point in time, without ripping Belichick, without, you know, calling into question his ability to build a roster, to whatever it is, we can at least say, because, you know, for the last like 25 years, you couldn't say, like, if Belichick made a move, you're like, look, if somebody else did this, I would, or if the Browns did this, I would be like, what the hell are you thinking? But Belichick did it, so we're going to give him a pass. I think now with what we've seen in the post-Brady era, it is okay to say, hey, like, were we 100% sure this is the right move when Bill Belichick does something?
And I'll say this really quickly. You know, I mentioned DeAndre Hopkins and Jerry Jeudy. If that happens, that's totally fine. I would also be totally fine with, in the commenter said, you know, there should be another move coming. If that next move is Orlando Brown or something that solidifies the offensive line, that to me is good enough as well, because that was half the problem for Mac Jones last year. He's very much sped up, couldn't work the play action the way they wanted to. And so if you're telling me you're going to solidify the left tackle spot and give him a guy like JuJu Smith-Schuster, who is statistically better in separation and yards after the catch and all that stuff statistically than Jacoby Myers, then okay, we can see what you're doing. But if you're giving me a patchwork offensive line and not doing anything else other than JuJu, that to me is where you start getting really concerned about what 23 may look like for them.
All right, guys, let's pivot. Keep it in the AFC East. Talk about the Bills, which we haven't really talked about actually all week long. You got Jordan Poyer, who checked the market and seems like he's going to re-sign with the Bills. Bills Mafia probably excited about this one. You guys consider this a win?
Yeah, I think this is huge for Buffalo. I mean, this is a guy that I think we all assumed was as good as gone, right? I mean, he's talking about possibly joining Miami, that he doesn't like, half of his paycheck being taken out in New York State. And so it kind of felt like this was a foregone conclusion that he was going to be gone. And when you're a team like Buffalo, who is right on the cusp of winning a Super Bowl and being a year in and year out Super Bowl contender, the last thing you want to do is start losing all pro talent, specifically in the secondary, when you're in a conference that has Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, and possibly now Aaron Rodgers and all these studs at the quarterback position. And so bringing in a guy that's not only still at the top of his game in terms of his play on the field, but a legitimate leader in that secondary, I don't know how you don't look at this as a major win for Buffalo.
I would, sorry, I was texting my buddy Zeke to let him know that Brissett's going to the Commanders. Zeke is in a, Zeke is obviously an NC State fan, went to school with me. So the Nats got rid of everybody, and NC State never wins anything. And, so he has the Commanders still there, but he's been in like this sort of very dark headspace because he's convinced that Sam Howell, a Carolina quarterback, is become the next great star of the DMV. That's all he's gonna have to. That's all he's gonna have in his life is Sam. So Brissett kind of calming him down. But yeah, look, I mean, you see the numbers. The points per game. They went up 2 points per game when Poyer was out. I mean, and is Leslie Frazier taking the year off?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's
which is another point not to sleep on. Again, if you want guys that are, he's obviously one of, the better defensive coordinators in the NFL. You lose him, you all of a sudden start losing brain trust like Poyer, Frazier. That's a recipe, like I was saying earlier, that's a recipe to really take a step back in a conference with all these elite quarterbacks.
Yeah, and, we saw a little bit of it on the offensive side of the ball. I think Ken Dorsey did a pretty good job, but clearly, it was a downgrade from Brian Daboll to Ken Dorsey. We talked about that a lot leading into the season. No one's saying Ken Dorsey can't get it done. It's just you have this proven track record of being really, really good with Brian Daboll. And so now you have a similar sort of thing where you have a track record of Leslie Frazier with this defensive, group having, putting up pretty stout numbers. Now they've been weak against the run at times, and the pass rush hadn't been great, but that's more of a personnel thing than I think a Leslie Frazier issue. So now you really need some consistency in terms of your personnel if you're going to be losing that defensive coordinator, especially in this particular defense. And you have Sean McDermott, so they'll be fine. McDermott's was a great defensive coordinator with the Panthers and briefly with the Eagles. But you're going to need, you want these veteran safeties on the back end because they are the keys to this particular defense. And if you have those veteran safeties on that back end, it's going to make whoever takes a DC job, whether it could be Sean McDermott calling plays, it's just going to make life a lot easier. So I think this is when we go back and look at this offseason, I think there's a decent chance that this could end up being the most underrated signing of the whole offseason if Buffalo wants to stay in the mix as an AFC power.
Not only that, Will, you're bringing back Poyer, but and that's obviously important because of what he brings to the table, not only from an on-field standpoint, but from a leadership standpoint and just knowing the defense. You lose Leslie Frazier. You also lost Tremaine Edmonds, which is something that we obviously have to point out there as well. He's been a key piece to the interior, or the middle of that field on defense. And you were talking about them poor against the run. That probably will continue here a little bit now with Edmonds being gone. So you keep Jordan Poyer back in the fold. That's just another veteran piece that could help you going forward.
How do you guys feel about the Bills? And I know this is way too early to ask this question, but I have had a futures ticket on the Bills now 2 years in a row. And 2 years in a row, they have disappointed me. And we're talking about how great this is that they brought back Jordan Poyer. They're still the second favorite to win the AFC conference at plus 450 on Caesars. And they're the third favorite to win the Super Bowl. At what point do we give up on the Bills as being a real powerhouse that's going to win?
I actually was watching, maybe it was actually a McAfee show today, which I might just start. I don't usually watch it daily.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun.
Yeah, it's a great show. I think that they were saying like it's like Pac-Man Jones and Boston Connor specifically were like the Bills' window is closed, which I think it's a little too early for that. I mean, you've got Josh Allen, so you're not, like you're not like your window's not closed. Like, excuse me. Your window's not closing when you got Josh Allen,
But would you put money on a futures ticket for them? I mean, they've been the favorite. They're not the favorite this year. They're the second favorite for the conference behind the Chiefs, but they've been the odds-on favorite 2 years in a row.
I think it's for me, it's too expensive because eventually you're more than likely going to get in a spot where, so like you take them at 5-1 or something like that, where, I mean, like you could just wait till the AFC Championship game and take them at like plus like 2-1, or wait till because they're going to have to get past the Chiefs at some point anyway. So for me, I don't like to dabble in that end, but like it would not surprise me if the Bills won a Super Bowl. It's just the AFC is going to be really hard for the next 5 years. Like Patrick Mahomes is just Tom Brady 2.0 in terms of where there is the path to getting to the Super Bowl is going to go through Kansas City 4 out of 5 years. And if you can't beat the Chiefs in Kansas City, you're probably not going to play in a Super Bowl. And there are going to be quarterbacks. Phillip Rivers comes to mind with Tom Brady.
I was going to say, what about those Chargers?
Well, it's like there are going to be quarterbacks who don't, Hall of Fame level quarterbacks who don't sniff a ring because Patrick Mahomes exists on planet Earth, and he's just going to. I mean, that's just the reality. And then you also have Allen. So like, I'm not closing anything on the Bills until Josh Allen's gone. But I mean, it's just going to be hard.
The one thing that I have concerns about, it revolves around Josh Allen. One, the turnovers in the red zone last year were just, you just can't have that. You can't contend for a Super Bowl and have your star quarterback, turn the ball over in the red zone. It's just not feasible. If they can somehow fix the running game and have a little bit more consistency there, because that's really been their issue, right? Over the last few years, they can put up points in a hurry, but if all of a sudden you have to grind out a game in the second half and really run the football effectively, they haven't been able to do it. And I saw a few people on social media saying maybe go after Zeke Elliott, who was just officially released from the Dallas Cowboys. And I'm sure we'll get to him, but that's somebody who I think would be interesting. If you talk about 2023, though, it is a little bit of a make or break year. I know that you can, restructure contracts and do all that stuff. But Josh Allen, and I know he recently just did it, but Josh Allen right now is accounting for $47 million against their cap in 2024. That is a monster number that, again, will be restructured in some form or another. But eventually, when you push these quarterback deals down the line, eventually you got to pay the piper. And so you get to a certain point, and now you're going to be really struck against the cap, like we've seen Tampa Bay now, as they've done. We pushed a lot of their guys back when they had Tom Brady. Now that he's gone, all this stuff's kind of come and due. They're restricted into what they can do in free agency right now. And I wonder if eventually Buffalo hits that point because they're moving Josh Allen's numbers around too much.
Yeah, I mean, look, Burrow's going to get paid. Herbert's going to get paid. Mahomes got paid. Deshaun Watson got paid. Lamar Jackson might get paid. I mean, like, there's just a lot of quarterbacks in the AFC who are going to take up huge cap spaces. And this is where it does come down to it, like your front office work is going to matter, right? Like the ability, you see what the Chiefs did, your ability to surround Patrick Mahomes, with JuJu for on a 1-year deal. You got McCole Hardman who can, you have all these people, like they lose Tyreek Hill and don't miss a beat. In fact, win the title. So it's like Buffalo is going to have to sacrifice some stuff. And the question is, can they effectively replace it and keep, it's hard to stay on top in the NFL. Really, really, really hard, even with a quarterback. And that's where, you lose Joe Shane, you lose Brian Dable, Leslie Frazier going for a year. You just have attrition when you win. And so it will, I mean, it's going to be tough.
And real quickly, I do want to see what a full season with Von Miller looks like. I think that was a big X factor last season. Obviously, their big offseason acquisition a year ago. He was a guy that was supposed to be that veteran, former champion, help get you over the hump. Obviously went down with a season-ending injury, wasn't able to play for them down the stretch. If he's able to play a full season, I do wonder how much of an impact that'll make.
I agree with you on that one. Okay, this one really surprised me. I don't know why it surprised me, and I wish that we had Q on the show today. Baker Mayfield to Tampa Bay signed a 1-year deal, $8.5 million, giving him the opportunity to battle for the starting spot with Kyle Trask. What do you guys think of Tampa Baker, right? Baker.
Fun
Tampa Baker.
fact. Fun fact. Tampa Baker. I like that actually.
Mhm.
I like that a lot. So fun fact. Sully, you probably remember what pick Tom Brady was, right?
Yes.
What was it?
199.
Tom Brady.
You're asking a past fan, they know.
Tom Brady's immediate replacements at both of the places he departed were the number 1 overall pick, Cam Newton and Baker Mayfield.
That's an interesting point. I didn't think of that. Yeah.
Kind of a
Yet none had a career like his.
Yeah, Baker definitely not. Cam actually won an MVP and is criminally underrated. But I digress. I thought that so Stephen O, who does the Sportsline Sims for us, posted or he sent in. Let me find the email real quick. Baker Mayfield to Tampa Bay. Here's the Sims. With Kyle Trask as the starter, they go from 6.4 wins to 7.6 with Baker Mayfield. And I thought Stephen made a great point in his email that he sent to all of us. Personally, if I were Tampa Bay, I would tank for the 2024 quarterbacks. And I think this is probably going to be a prevailing sentiment across the board when you talk about the Bucs and Baker Mayfield, in that Baker, they're signing him to a 1-year deal. He's gonna battle Kyle Trask, as you see on rap sheets tweet. If Baker Mayfield comes in and helps you win 1 or 2 games, did you really just shoot yourself in the foot with a cannon, no less? By virtue of moving yourself from a possible top 5 pick to a possible top 15 pick. Because if you have a top 15 pick, you're probably not getting a quarterback. You know what I'm saying? Like is Baker make them just good enough where they're not going to be involved in the top overall pick, but they're not going to be sniffing the playoffs? I think that's kind of my question.
It depends. Is Sean McVay coming with him to Tampa Bay? I think that was a huge X factor for him, because I think if you put pretty much any quarterback with Sean McVay, they're going to be able to put up numbers, which is what we saw at the end of last season when he joined Los Angeles. But pretty much everywhere other stop that Baker Mayfield's been outside of his early years with Cleveland, he's kind of faltered off a little bit. Now, obviously, you still have Mike Evans right now. You still have Chris Godwin as of right now. I believe I saw a report that the Buccaneers were going to be one of the teams. I think it was the Tampa Bay Times that said the Buccaneers were going to be one of the teams that's going to be aggressive in trying to get Ezekiel Elliott. So you're surrounding him with a lot of assets that you would think that maybe could produce something. So I do wonder if that might be a big difference. But I'm one of these guys that, you drafted Kyle Trask in the 2nd round. You might as well see what you have, because like you're saying, Will, if all of a sudden he's not the guy, Kyle Trask, well then, all right, you stink. You're going to have a top 5 pick. You go after one of those quarterbacks. If he's great, well then there you go. You have a 2nd round pick on his rookie deal, and off we go. So the Baker Mayfield thing, yeah, I know that you might want a veteran just to kind of have that safety net, but I would have much rather that safety net be like Jacoby Brissett than it does for Baker Mayfield, because there is that off chance that Baker gets hot and turns into Tampa Baker, and we all of a sudden start getting a little weird, and we're talking about a top 10 pick, like you said, well, outside of a top 5.
Now, and in defense of the Buccaneers, you can't. I think there's probably one team out there this year, and it's the Colts, who might be tanking for the 2024 draft class. I just sort of been thinking this lately. Like, there's a decent chance that they just decide to draft the best player available at 4 and then say, we're going to suck this year and we're just not going to have a quarterback. But I don't think Tampa Bay wants to do that. The Glazer family is not scared to fire people. You have, they're really quick turnover, even, Jason Light and Todd Bowles with the championship. And so now, you do want to go out and get somebody. You look around the division. I mean, the Panthers have Andy Dalton. The Saints have Derek Carr. The Falcons have Desmond Ridder, and it's possible Baker could compete in that division.
Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke.
Yeah. Justice in the chat says NFC South is still maybe the worst division. Tampa could easily sneak into the playoffs. They just needed somebody to effectively throw the ball. Brady wasn't that last year. Can we really blame that on Tom Brady?
2022 Tom Brady is better than 2023 Baker Mayfield.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
I don't. In fact, 2023 Tom Brady might be better than 2023 Baker Mayfield. By the way, let's not forget too, they're changing offensive coordinators.
But one of the big issues for this team is they couldn't run the football. I mean, that's the reason why Tom Brady had to throw a record amount of times in the regular season. You get somebody that can run the football, that's going to make Trask and or Baker Mayfield's life much easier than it was for Tom Brady a year ago.
I also think too that we severely, and I'm guilty as charged of this, severely underrated the drop off from Bruce Arians to Todd Bowles at the head coaching position, and with the influence it would have on the offense. And maybe Tom Brady guilty as charged too, because he, by all accounts, could have, potentially helped push out Bruce Arians. Bowles, I think Bowles with Baker Mayfield has potential for disaster.
Right. And the tanking thing too, if you're Todd Bowles, you're obviously not in the business of doing that. You have no long-term security with this organization to feel like you can absorb a tanking down season and expect to keep your job. So it's not like it's Bruce Arians where you're saying, okay, maybe that's somebody who's a little bit more tenured and that makes a little bit more sense. If you're all of a sudden, let's just say you stink and you have the number 1 overall pick and you're drafting Caleb Williams, you're starting over with somebody new. You're doing a full Arizona Cardinals where it's Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury and you're trying to build it. Not that worked out, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, you're going to pair the quarterback with the coach.
Exactly.
And when you have the number 1 overall pick and you're firing your coach, which a lot of times happens because, your team stunk. If there's a good quarterback class, it's a much more attractive job. In theory, the hypothetical where if Sean Payton doesn't take the Broncos, maybe he's like, ooh, Tampa Bay,
right.
I would point out too. So I'm gonna be on my good friend Dave, friend of the podcast, Dave Damashek's show tomorrow. It's the -3 podcast. I'm sure subscribe. And Shaq and I for the last I don't know, 5 or 10 years. It might be 10. Have ranked the NFC South quarterbacks every year before the season. And we were texting about this. He was just like, "What has happened to our division? It used to be it was Cam was number 4 one year, when Jameis Winston was a rookie potentially, and now it's Ritter, Trask, Baker, and Derek Carr. What has happened? The NFC South, the mighty has fallen."
Well, I do think that there's obviously another shoe to drop in terms of the division. The Carolina Panthers having the number 1 overall pick. We could be talking about Bryce Young. We could be talking about C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, which if all of a sudden that guy turns into the next best thing, all right, well, then that increases the level of play. Still, you're talking about Ritter, Mayfield, and/or Trask. But Derek Carr right now is the best quarterback in that division, which is hilarious because we've talked about it before. He went from number 4 in the AFC West to now number 1 by default in the NFC South, which is just a remarkable turn of events for him.
Well, we talked about yesterday how the NFC East was just an overall winner, and the Eagles did something I found to be a little bit shocking. They're releasing Pro Bowl cornerback Darius Slay after 3 years. And I really just want to know what Billy thinks about this first.
Oh, man. Oh, man. I mean, I wasn't expecting this. We had the conversation before last week. We talked about, Bradbury and whether or not I wanted him to come back. And Wilson asked me that last week. And I said, no, if he wants to leave, he can leave. But I guess he was listening to me and heard that he could probably come back and redeem himself from that Super Bowl performance that he had. And so he's doing that. But I did not see Darius Slay not being back on this Eagles team this upcoming season. But I do understand he was looking for a 3-year deal, fully guaranteed. He's 32 years old. You can't give a guy like that type of money, especially his cap hit for the next few seasons as well. I understand it, but this is the positive thing for the Eagles, though, as well, because yes, we may not have Darius Slay on the roster, but we did get Bradbury. We did re-sign him. And this more than likely means that CJ Gardner-Johnson will be an Eagle this year as well. So, there's still some upside here to this Eagles defense. Not to worry too much. I think we should be all right.
Billy, does that change your mindset with the NFL draft? You do have the 10th pick. Are you now in Christian Gonzalez, Joey Porter conversations now, or is that?
And you know what, Sully? That, I've been talking with friends and texting back with a whole bunch of guys trying to figure out what the Eagles are going to do at that number 10 slot. I thought beforehand, when we were going to keep Bradbury and I thought Slay was going to be here as well, we probably go, maybe Jalen Carter slides, or we still go defensive tackle, defensive line, because that's what the Eagles do. They either go offensive or defensive line. They how we make sure he shores that part of the team up before he does anything else. But now it kind of seems like maybe we're in that Joey Porter, type of conversation, or maybe we're in that Witherspoon type of conversation where they do maybe draft a corner that high. But I still don't see it to be likely. I do see them inevitably taking a defensive lineman or a pass rusher in that spot at 10.
They're not taking a cornerback in the first round.
Yeah,
they don't
historically have it.
That's what they do.
Can you name the last defensive back that the Philadelphia Eagles took with a first round pick?
Ooh, trivia.
Jordan Brown?
Wait,
Or was it Lito Shepherd?
was Lito Shepherd?
I was like, Will, you don't even know the answer to this?
No, Sheldon Brown was a second round pick. No, I was making sure I didn't miss. It was Lito
I
Shepherd.
knew it was either one of the. I know they were the
2002. They took Lito Shepherd, Michael Lewis, Sheldon Brown with first and second round picks, all defensive backs, and they have not used a first round pick on a defensive back since. Howie Roseman just doesn't do it. I don't know if that's I don't know if that's by virtue of where he's picking, where you used to have some uncertainty, like because it's quarterbacks typically have not, we've seen them drafted like a cornerback who's drafted in the top 5 typically has to be a really, really, or top 10 needs to be a really, really elite corner. The Eagles haven't had a ton of those picks. I think it's smart by Howie to lean into what you do well, but he may feel like he's not like that's not his strongest area of evaluation, and so he doesn't want to try and force it with a cornerback in the first round, or he just believes you build in the trenches. Either whatever the case may be, it would be a stunner if the Eagles took a cornerback in the first round.
Well, that's what makes it interesting, though, is because you're releasing Slay. You don't know what's going to happen with CJ Gardner-Johnson. Like you don't know. So all of a sudden, if let's say the Arizona Cardinals with Gannon all of a sudden come out of nowhere and say, all right, let's bring this guy that I've worked with before, sign him to a massive deal. Well, then all of a sudden you really have to start having that conversation, which is uncharted territory, as you were saying with Philadelphia.
I mean, the thing with Howie is like, as Eagles fans, we all remember the Chip Kelly era and, him being demoted after that. And I mean, after that situation, I think that was the best situation for Howie because he learned so much from that, being demoted and being, sent to the back office. He learned so much from that situation that when he came out of that, he made the move to get Carson Wentz and we go to a Super Bowl and then he still drafts Jalen Hurts. He was just so much forward thinking and he had his principles and he stood by them. And he did have his hiccups along the way still. But, I think Eagles fans now have way more trust in Howie Roseman over the years, seeing all the picks that he's made and all the decisions that he's made and how good he is with the cap. We have no other choice but to trust Howie Roseman at this point.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just saying that, I just don't I mean, it wouldn't be stunning if they draft. I mean, I take that back. I would be stunned if they drafted a cornerback in the first round. But I mean, if it's a position of, if you believe it's a position of, if there's a guy there that they love, they could do it. I really don't think that, especially where they're picking. I think I said the same.
10's not bad. I don't think drafting a corner at 10 is egregious or anything. I think it's egregious for the Eagles. Yes, as you.
It depends on who the cornerback is. We saw with J.C. Horn and oh God, who did the Broncos take? Patrick Surtain the second. Those are you just have to have a belief and a conviction that you have a guy who could possibly be a lockdown corner if you're going to pull the trigger on that. So I think it's all depends on sort of the cornerback class, maybe more so than the Eagles and where they're picking.
I mean, Sauce Gardner last year went in the first round as well. So I mean,
again. Derek Stingley. No. Look, there's nothing wrong with taking a cornerback in the first round, especially if you take him high because you usually have those elite cornerbacks. I'm just saying it is not the Eagles' MO to do that, which would make it surprising unless there's a guy who they really have a conviction on being a lockdown corner.
I agree.
Okay, on that note, we are going to take a quick break. But before we do, it's bracket time. So get yours in now on the CBS Sports app. You can play in men's and women's pools with friends and join our challenges for the chance to win a new car and trips to the 2024 Final Four. Get the CBS Sports app or visit cbssports.com/play to start filling out your brackets. No purchase necessary. See terms and rules for details. You're watching the Pick Six podcast. We'll be right back.
Get breaking news.
Big news coming out of the NFL today.
Highlights and instant reactions.
The largest final round comeback in Ford championship history. We're down to the Final Four.
I just want to take time to analyze greatness.
Talk winners and losers with a guy who's already a big winner.
CBS Sports HQ. It's all sports all day long.
Welcome back to the Pick Six podcast, talking NFL free agency. If you haven't already, hit us up on social at Pick Six Pod on all social media platforms. Also, if you are finding us today on the CBS Sports main YouTube page, make sure that you follow the Pick Six Pod. Well, we've talked. Yes,
I was going to say a little breaking-ish news. We knew it was going to happen, but it actually happened.
Yes.
Zeke Elliott, the Cowboys. I don't think they announced that they released it. They just sent out a tweet that said, "Thank you, Zeke Elliott." It's like Jerry Jones, don't even.
That football signed by Ezekiel Elliott.
Oh, really? Did it?
Can we just?
Did that football game?
Say, as a 49ers fan, The fact that the last play that he played as a Cowboy was in the divisional round where they bizarrely put him at center and he was absolutely leveled. Who was it? Was it Fred Warner? Who got him?
I think it was a defensive lineman. Like it may have been
Yeah.
Fred Warner. I can't remember. He got absolutely truck stick, put on roller skates. Total disaster. How many did Sully did that football gain like 3.1 yards per carry last year? Or like,
It did. It actually lost 3.1% of the value every single carry.
Zeke Elliott was. I think it's fascinating that it is kind of interesting that in the same year that Zeke Elliott's being cut by the Cowboys, Jalen Ramsey traded for the second time in his career, so he's moving on to his third team. But like, if you drafted, which I always bring this up because it seems painfully obvious. Zeke was a great running back. Dak won Rookie of the Year, but Zeke could have easily been Rookie of the Year. They won the division when he and Dak were rookies. If you'd gone Jalen Ramsey and then gotten either, I think Derrick Henry's in the draft. Is it Nick Chubb too? You could have gone Jalen Ramsey, Derrick Henry, and then later added Dak Prescott in that draft, which would have been, pretty good. Zeke was awesome. Won the rushing title twice, 72 total touchdowns, 10,598 yards. He had some off the field stuff. Ended up suing the NFL. Was a great run blocker. I just think it sort of reminds you that, as good as Zeke was, you could have had Derrick Henry and Jalen Ramsey, and you wonder if that would have changed the trajectory of the Cowboys at all.
I think that's totally true. I'm just seeing where Derrick Henry was taken. He was taken second round, 45th overall. So you clearly could have made some moves to acquire him, obviously, if that's who you felt like. But yeah, no, and not only that, Will, you're talking about the draft position, but we should also talk about the contract as well. I mean, that hamstrung them to doing certain things over the course of the last few years. I mean, they're just getting out of this deal, but they were kind of the one of the first teams or first few teams. Obviously, Todd Gurley was part of this as well.
And by the way, Dallas took Jalen Smith in the second round. They could have just taken Derrick Henry.
Sure.
Yeah, they could have they passed on Jalen Ramsey for Zeke and then took Jalen Smith instead of being able to take Derrick Henry. It was just like it was there. Like that. It wasn't it's not a this and this and this. It was just there.
Right. And then they compounded it with a $90 million contract over 6 years, which, again, like I was saying, hamstrung them to doing other moves that probably would have helped them contend a little bit further in the postseason. Because as we've seen, and we're obviously clearly getting this now, as we've seen the running back landscape change in terms of how important teams are using their capital against them. You don't give big money to a running back. As much as you feel like he's the fabric of your organization, you don't give him a 6 and 90 or whatever the Los Angeles Rams gave Todd Gurley. It just is a absolute cancer to what you can do in other spots of that roster. And it feels like they're almost like disposable lighters. Like you can just kind of plug and play in terms of what you find out in the draft and change things out. So to me, that's one of the big things. Yes, the draft, but also the contract with Zeke Elliott was things that hamstrung the Cowboys.
What a comparison. Disposable lighters.
I know. It's a little harsh, but you kind of get what I'm saying.
I get it. Well, you guys, we talked about it earlier. Do you think Zeke?
Actually, I have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
What is your version of like a non-disposable, like a Zippo?
Yeah, like the electric one. You ever see those? I got one of those. Those are pretty cool.
Do you have a lot of lighters?
Enough. I don't know. I don't smoke or anything, but
yeah, I was wondering how many lighters.
I only have the long candle ones, that so you don't burn your.
You don't find that suspicious? You don't find that suspicious?
I do indeed find that suspicious.
All right, so where do you guys think that Zeke goes? I mean, obviously we talked about how the Bucs couldn't run the ball. Is that a good spot for him?
Go ahead, Will.
Yeah, I think we say the Bucs. I don't know about that. I mean, was Leonard Fournette was he Christian McCaffrey's class or was he Zeke's class? I can't remember.
He just retired, right?
Yeah.
Or was he released? Did he retire, or is he just? Because I know he wanted to finish
I don't know if he's officially retired. Yeah. But the Buccaneers, I don't know if they're in a place that makes a lot of sense. If they want to give him a boatload of money, I'm sure Zeke will take it. But for him, I would assume you're trying to find a place where you can win. So let's go through the obvious ones. Kansas City. Is that a team where you can compliment him with Isaiah Pacheco? Or do you go to Buffalo, who we mentioned earlier? They've struggled to get over that hump, and part of that issue is they've struggled to run the football and kind of grind teams out late in games. Could that be an option for them to complement Naeem Hines and kind of that running game that they're trying to form there, and maybe take a little bit off of Josh Allen? We talked about his red zone issues. Maybe if you don't have to use him as your power back in the red zone, that makes him a little bit more effective in the red area. So those are two teams that obviously are going to get brought up. Do you go to maybe Philadelphia? That could be an interesting, a heel turn because it looks like they're not going to bring back Miles Sanders. And I think they only signed, what was it, Brad Penny? I don't know if that means
Rashad Penny.
Or Rashad Penny.
Brad Penny's a former MLB player.
Yes, I don't know where my brain was going there.
I will say too, like Billy had pointed out just in Slack when we were talking about, like, he wouldn't. The Eagles do have a history of signing former Cowboys players. That would be the sort of thing that
be a great heel turn.
Yeah, that that would be the sort of thing that where it's maybe spite motivates Zeke Elliott a little bit. You get two good matchups there.
And I'll give you one more. Maybe Miami. Is that a team that again has struggled to find a running game? I don't know if he necessarily fits Mike McDaniel's system and how he wants to run the football, but that's a team that again has just struggled to really have any established running game. And so far they haven't brought anybody super of note. I know they re-signed Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert, but is that another guy to maybe keep an eye on there? Because I know that there were whispers that they were interested in Dalvin Cook. So is that just another veteran that they could look at?
Yeah, Billy in the chat spamming, bring him to the birds. Well, speaking of spiteful, there's no one more spiteful than Aaron Rodgers. And we definitely already had a show about this today, our emergency pod. But Aaron Rodgers told the Pat McAfee show that he intends to play for the Jets and the teams just need to work out compensation. We've had a couple hours to digest this info. Any other thoughts that you have about this? And are either the Packers or the Jets winners or losers in this scenario?
I would say, well, I mean, again, if you get Aaron Rodgers and it's at a reasonable price, the Jets are clearly winners because right now they're a team that has Zach Wilson as their starting quarterback. And we've seen Zach Wilson in the NFL. He's not very good right now. And we don't know if he's ever going to be any good. So that's going to put you fourth place in the AFC East. You get Aaron Rodgers, now you're talking about possibly winning that division. Now you're talking about a deep playoff run. You're even talking Super Bowl, which is bananas for a team like the Jets, who we've mentioned have the longest playoff drought in the NFL. So clearly, as long as you're not giving up multiple first-round picks and you can get Aaron Rodgers to East Rutherford, you're clearly a winner there because you've instantly improved your quarterback position for at least 2023.
Yeah, no complaint. I mean, look.
What about the Packers? Are the Packers losers here?
I mean, I think. All right. So, like, my take is that, assuming you don't have to give up too much. I mean, that's the whole thing. It's like, you can't give up. We talked about this, and we've heard reports after Aaron Rodgers was on the Pat McAfee show. We have a Katie's first emergency podcast.
Oh,
wow!
Yeah.
I didn't think about that. It was
a moment
handled with applause. I think that Rodgers. The sort of the reports that came out of that after, Rodgers pointed out that the Packers were holding this thing up is that they don't want to, they don't need 2 first-round picks, but it's just this back and forth. This is how it goes when you've got this big time, quarterback name who's under contract and you've got different leverage spots on both sides. You're going to have some public posturing, and you're getting that from the Packers. And you hear the Packers leak out like, we don't need that much, et cetera, et cetera. So, I think as long as you don't give up a firm first round pick for it, and it's like a conditional type of pick, then the Jets are definitely winners. I don't think that the Packers are, I think right now in the heat of the current moment, maybe you could call the Packers losers because of the way that Rodgers flipped this on them, making them look like the reason.
Oh, well, we lost Will there, but I know what he's saying that maybe maybe the Packers look bad because Rodgers is flipping the script and kind of pointing the finger to them, which is true. But I would say this though, Katie, I would put them as a loser in this standpoint. It felt like Rodgers was going to finish his career with Green Bay last year after he signed that extension, right? Like it felt like that was going to be come to somewhat of a harmonious end of all this drama, only to come back a year later. And this is what we've seen. It's pretty much the end at this point. And now we have 1 year, Green Bay does, of getting Jordan Love on his rookie contract, where you could have had 2. Now we're talking about the 5th-year option in 2024. And really, you only have like a year and a half, 2 years until you have to start handing him possibly a massive extension. So from a quarterback transition standpoint, Green Bay couldn't even have enjoyed the rookie contract for as long as they could have had Rodgers and them had a little bit more in sync in terms of how they're communicating and how they wanted to end this thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. What do you think of Jordan Love though? Because now it's Jordan Love time, and we've seen him just very, very shortly. If Aaron Rodgers was injured, do you think he is the guy? Do you think that it was kind of worth all of this drama that has ensued ever since they drafted him?
Well, you might as well find out, right? It's not like you had to sign him to a crazy deal or something along those lines where Rodgers did run this whole thing out. I guess that's the other angle to this as well. If Rodgers had stayed, now you are either burning a first-round asset because you have to trade him away, or you're now talking about just immediately extending him from what you've seen in practice in very minimal live game action. And so, we'll have to wait and see what happens with Jordan Love, but he is a guy that, I mean, clearly, I remember Ryan Wilson really liking him coming out of the draft. We haven't seen much of him, obviously, in the NFL. But now you have the 2023 season where he's only going to make like $2.2 million in base salary. You have to judge it at that point, and now you're talking about $20 million the year after on his 5th-year option. So that's where I think, again, they could be losers, and we'll soon find out if he's the guy or not. Clearly, you don't have to sign him if all of a sudden he stinks up the joint. If he stinks up the joint, you're probably not going to be a good football team, and you have a high pick. So, there's ways to kind of land on your feet here, but ultimately I do think that they've kind of wasted an opportunity here to have multiple years of a quarterback on his rookie deal with Jordan Love.
Yeah, agree with that. Sorry, Chrome, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing. I don't know
if you wanted to finish your thought. Yeah.
Well, no, I was just going to say that, for me, the Packers are maybe losers right now because of how this is going to play out. If Rodgers can convince everyone that it is the Packers' fault that this is all happening, I do think moving on from Rodgers, it's going to be one of those things a little bit like Belichick and Brady, where when the separation happens, it's probably best for both parties. You don't want to put it on one person or the other. But at the end of the day, the 2023 results are going to ultimately determine. It's football. It's the winners and losers are determined on the field. And while if Aaron Rodgers wins a Super Bowl with the Jets, the Packers are losers. If Rodgers misses the playoffs and Jordan Love takes the Packers to the playoffs, regardless of whether the AFC and the NFC, the power structure over there, then we're going to say that the Packers were winners. And you could also make the case that the Packers have a chance to be winners long-term here too, where if they're able to, Jordan Love becomes the franchise quarterback. Rodgers' first season, 8 games in, Favre was winning with the Jets. And Rodgers, I don't think was. Let me double check. I feel like I feel like Rodgers in his first season as a starter, he went 6-10. Is that right? It's 2008.
Sure.
That sounds about right. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was 6-10 as a starter in his first season. So, and then you have Brett Favre who's winning. So 6 or so games in, it was oh wow, this and they started 2-3. So let's say 5 games into that 2008 season, I think people were probably oh my God, the Packers might have made a mistake here, but so it's going to be difficult to sort of balance that and say, you don't want to jump all over Jordan Love 5 games in and be if Rodgers is winning games, there's several different complex layers to picking the winners and losers here. I think if the Packers extract themselves with a minimal cap hit and Jordan Love ends up being good, then they're winners. But if he's not, there's a lot of different pathways for this one.
You want to be the 2023 version of the 2022 Seattle Seahawks. You lose your franchise quarterback, you bring in that next guy that you've at least had in the background and help you contend for the playoffs and reach the playoffs.
Agree. All right, we got to take a quick break here. You're watching the Pick 6 podcast. We'll be right back.
Bracket season is here. Join the madness by playing the official bracket game of the NCAA. Get the CBS Sports app and be part of the madness.
Welcome back to the Pick Six podcast. I'm Katie Mox here with Will Brinson and Tyler Sullivan. This is day 3 of 2023 free agency. Make sure you join us all week long to keep up to date with free agent signings and also show the pod some love. Smash that like button, comment, and of course, subscribe on our YouTube page. Okay, guys, we only have like 5 more minutes here. Any other winners or losers or news from day 3 that we should discuss?
Well, I mean, you're a winner, Katie Mox, for we're keeping it under an hour. What do you think this is?
They brought me on to.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not from day 3, from sort of like the day 1. Sully, do you have anything that stands out to you? I'm trying to think who.
Well, I do think that it's a little bit interesting that, the Panthers keep making interesting moves where they're interested in Adam Thielen. They bring in Hayden Hurst. It just doesn't feel like those are moves that you would pair a rookie quarterback with, right? Like, adding a guy like Adam Thielen, does that really like match a timeline for, if let's just say you draft Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, or Anthony Richardson, like, or Will Levis? Like, that to me seems a little weird. So
The Levis drumbeat is growing a little loud out there.
Okay. And so, but to me, that just feels, I know that like the rookie quarterbacks love their tight ends. And I think that Adam Thielen's a great red zone weapon, but it just feels like a little bit premature for those types of moves to not even know what your quarterback is going to be.
Yeah. So you're saying the Panthers are
maybe they're somewhat of a loser. Again, they haven't signed Thielen, so like I'm not going to dock them for something they haven't done. But the moves that they're interested in kind of have me scratching my head a little bit.
Yeah, I mean it does. I mean it does. I think I agree with that. I think when you look at the Panthers, they locked down Bradley Bozeman, meaning that they're going to have the exact same offensive line for 2 years in a row. And it wasn't always great last year, but you got my boy Ike Ekwonu at the left tackle spot, and you hope that group will grow together and be more like that is sometimes such a huge thing for offensive lines. It's just a consistency year over year. You have Brady Christensen, a 3rd-round pick from 2021, and so some free agents on there. So you're hoping that sort of develops. Taylor Moton on the right side, but man, you look at these pass catchers, dude. Like Hayden Hurst is their number 1 pass catching weapon now that DJ Moore's gone.
Which is, again, like I'm saying, it's a little bit odd.
It is really going to be difficult to ask a Bryce Young or a CJ Stroud, a Levis, and certainly an Anthony Richardson, and even an Andy Dalton to come in here and win games with these sort of weapons. Now we have seen Frank Reich offenses, and remember their top running back is Chuba Hubbard too. Like this offense, Frank Reich can do some stuff with the offense, but I agree with you. I think there's, they got 1 draft pick in the first 2 rounds in the next 2 years. It's hard to get hard to make your offense really good without those picks.
Right. So that to me seems it just seems a little odd. Like that doesn't feel like teams that are trying to build a young foundation. That just sounds like they're kind of patching things together as they go along.
I think we could throw. I mean, we mentioned the Patriots already, but I think you can throw the Patriots in or Mac Jones in as a loser. I mean, with my boy. I can't keep anything straight today. Jacoby Myers. I was about to say Jacoby Brissett. Jacoby Myers leaving, and then JuJu Smith-Schuster coming in. There wasn't a ton of action.
Not even
specifically on Wednesday.
Well, and this is what's happened. We talked about this. It's like all the stuff that happens on Monday and Tuesday is basically announced at 4:00 on Wednesday. And I think there's not a ton of, I would say losers too, Jets fans who thought they might get some resolution today with Aaron Rodgers. But you can't but
they feel like they have him. I've been watching Jets fans on Twitter. They're very excited.
Yeah, that's true.
I'll give you one winner. I'll give you one winner. I do think that Tony Pollard's a winner. They get rid of Ezekiel Elliott. More touches for you in that backfield. You're playing on the franchise tag next season as of right now, whether you sign an extension or not. Let's just say you play out that year. If you get all those Zeke touches, you're going to score more. You're going to compile more, especially in the red area. You're going to score more. That's going to set you up for a bigger payday. Again, running backs don't get paid that much in the NFL anymore, but they're probably not going to tag you for a 2nd year in a row. And so that's going to lead you to a more productive season and a higher contract. So for him, that's probably a good move for him today.
Yeah, and I think
also
sorry, I was going to say, like, you look at the top 100 free agents. I mean, this free agent class is okay. It's been Orlando Brown's still out there. Now Darius Slay is out there. We have Odell Beckham still. Dalton Schultz. There's just not a lot of juice in this free agent class, and we've seen sort of the top parts taken off. I mean, I don't think we're going to see a ton of drama, over the next 48 hours, unless there's some kind of crazy trade.
Yeah, that's
Well,
a
and
good
I do
point.
think that the rookie class coming in, there's a lot of good running backs. So there's a lot of competition coming out.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just saying, like, in general, this free agent class is like, we've seen a bunch of defensive tackles and off-ball linebackers sign, backup quarterbacks. There's not like a ton of juice to this class. Rodgers is going to get traded. We know there's only one landing spot for him to go to. It's like, it feels, unless there's some surprise lurking over the horizon, and that surprise usually comes in the first hour of the free agency opening. So I don't know. I feel like we may be sort of settling into we may be very quickly into the second wave and even third wave of free agency more quickly than usual.
And I'll say this quickly in terms of a winner, and this is more of a big picture win. It's not a singular winner, but it's NFC quarterbacks or elite NFC quarterbacks, because there's about 3 of them. There, you see a huge exodus leaving the NFC, going into the AFC, whether it's Aaron Rodgers, even Jimmy Garoppolo, who again, wasn't, Katie, you would know, he's not necessarily like an elite
Watch your mouth when you talk to me, Tyler.
Former Patriot, that's totally fine. We're in the same boat with him. But he's going to the AFC, helping that team, the Las Vegas Raiders. We assume that it's going to get done with Aaron Rodgers going to the New York Jets. So you could say that Jalen Hurts or whoever's going to be under center for San Francisco or Kirk Cousins. I mean, we're going to be talking about these dudes, Dak Prescott, who shouldn't be in the conversation as the best quarterbacks in their conference, but now certainly are, at least, behind Jalen Hurts, I would say. So
I mean, Danny Dimes might be a top 5 NFC quarterback,
which is crazy. Wow. And then so you go down to number 5 in the AFC.
Actually, Matthew Stafford.
Right. Like you go down to number 5 in the AFC. That's, you're talking Joe Burrow, you're talking, not Josh Allen, but you're talking legitimate all-pro Hall of Fame caliber players, or at least talent-wise. So that to me is, again, just another quarterback going from the NFC to the AFC. That for the rest of those NFC quarterbacks, they're probably laughing all the way to the bank.
Oh, Billy Hurts is the clear number 1. Okay, Billy. I will say
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna. Well, I'll let you finish because I'm gonna wrap us up here.
I like how Billy is like comments in the chat just so he can post it on the screen, like when it's about the
Exactly. But before we get out of here, Kale did ask, any Brinson Sucks hats in stock? Where can we get those? Because I would like one as well. Are they in the official store? I mean,
no, they are.
This should be an official Pick 6 Pod hat.
Everyone agrees with it. They're made by our podcast listener Lewis, and there are only, I think, 3 of them made. And like I said, I have one that says "I suck," although I wish I had gotten a Brinson Sucks hat.
Brinson Sucks. Yeah, I think
it's
that
like,
works.
Too bad we don't have what did you call them? The toboggans?
Yes, we need Brinson Sucks
that would have been
toboggans.
I'd rock a Brinson Suck toboggan.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, we will get on that. But we got to wrap this up. We're already 2 minutes over an hour. Thanks for everybody for joining in to the Pick 6 podcast. Make sure you join us tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. for more NFL free agency coverage. Remember to like, comment, subscribe on our YouTube page. And for anyone listening to audio only, make sure that you download, follow, leave a review, tell your friends to listen and watch the pod. We will see you tomorrow.